Hello everyone, welcome back again to this series of tutorial in class and objects in Java. So this video is all about class constructor. Okay, so we defined earlier that class constructors are used to initializing new objects. So right now we were going to let you see what is a constructor, and I will use it to set some value to our attributes. Okay, so to to start with, I will be creating a new hero, and that class will be hero 3. So I will just use the same thing here for us to really keep going with our activity. So I'll create a new function class, which is hero 3. So I always keep all the things that I have. Um, hero 3. So my concern is only those things, like all the attributes that I have first. So I'll just copy from hero 2 to hero 3 because these all the things that I need. The same thing, okay? So in our hero 3, we have our attributes for our class, okay? So when we create instance or a new object from this hero, it automatically called the default controller, okay? So going back to our main class, okay, and I'll just move um, right now. I'll be comment all of those things, so on our run, when you run our program, there is no output, and we will just concentrate on the on our hero 3. Okay, so in our hero 3, this is how we can create object, right? So we always use uh, object. Okay, for example, I'll be creating hero, and I will name it to Aldos. Okay, and this is a new hero. Okay, open close parenthesis. Oh, by the way, I am using hero 3, not hero, so I'll be using 3 here and 3 here. So we are now going to declare the class hero 3, and we name our object Aldos, and we create a new instance. We use the new instance, meaning you are now creating a new template or new object from our class hero, and we call this one, this is what we call the class constructor. This is the constructor from hero 3. So class constructor is the same, it is a function. Okay, by the way, I'll mention again what is the definition. Constructors are used for initializing new object. So you are initializing new object from your class. So that is why constructor is a function or method in your class uh, file or your class definition. So it is the same name from our class name, but this one is a function. Look at what we had once we call function, like my object region for our previous discussion. Once it is function, it is enclosed with open close parenthesis. So the same thing, we have open close parenthesis. Okay, so in there we already initialize new object, okay, by using a constructor. Okay, so here we have a default constructor. We don't have a constructor that we specify here, but when we run it, it is automatically being called. But in our class definition, it is what we call default constructor, meaning default constructor, there is an empty constructor in our class definition. So once that is empty, the compiler is recognize that one and just move into whatever the things that you define on your class. But if you provide the default class controller constructor, then you can see what is the action. So remember, uh, you know that you can initialize new object from the class. So if we create our class constructor definition. So we just type hero and 3, okay, then open close parenthesis. So this is a function or method that has a no return type. There is no return type, and all the function is here. Whatever the class is being initiated, create, or being initialized for a new object, this function will automatically called. So sometimes this is a way that you initialize something, you set something and set something on your classes. So for now, let us try to see if this function is automatically being executed if the class is being initiated. So right now we will try to use output command system out that print line. Okay, and this one, hello, this is a constructor. Okay, now once it was saved, remember that we are now created print line locking in. So remember that we created a new instance of a class. Okay, we just only create a new instance of the class. So when we use the new keyword, it now the hero3 constructor is being executed. So when we run it, as you can see, it outputs hello, this is an constructor. So automatically, uh, by the use of new keyword, the class constructor is being executed during this syntax. But if that isn't have that one, there's no initiation take place. So what happened? That is only an empty because you didn't even initialize a new object. You just only refer you already on this part you just um, we call it it's only you only reference or set a value from the RAM of for the object name, but there is no uh, initialization of the class for this line. So by the use of the new keyword, you initialize the constructor. Okay, that is hero tree. So that is why whatever we define our hero tree constructor, you can set here, or you can see that it will automatically load. Okay. So what are the uses for constructor? Some of when you go to actual development, all the initial values that really need to this class should be set up also on the class constructor so that there is no need for us to set manually all the default configuration. Okay, like for example, on our main, uh, after we create our new, we initialize some data or we set value from attributes. So we can set all of those using here in our constructor by just doing it. You can set the value data. So we can adjust also. We can create multiple constructor since this is Java, and the other advantage for Java is what we call method overloading. When we say method overloading, you can create the same method in your class definition as long as there is not the same parameter list. Like for example, we have here a default constructor. We can set also create another another constructor with have um, a parameter data to be passed on the parameter list. So we call it parameterized constructor. So hero 3, like for example, int code. Okay. So this is what we call a method overloading. We overload the class with the same class name, but there is no error since this hero 3 is not the same with the hero tree here. This one is what we call the default controller. This one is the default constructor, and this one is a constructor with one parameter list. Okay, so you have one parameter that you have to submit data. So by this one you can set, like for example, um, you can set for example code is equal to code. Now we have here a problem. Okay, since we are now using we call it attributes with the same name from here, and we cannot deny the fact that we can really experience those kind of things like here. So this one, you intended that this code is equal, you're referencing it on this code, and this one, assigned value for code, is this one. So sometimes some of the programmer, they will use, like for example, they will just use input code, and that's it, input code. So meaning this code here is here assigning value for code with the inputted value from the parameter list. So you just change the name so you can directly um, set a value. So this one, this data came from the parameter and assign it to the value on the class attribute. Okay, so code is equal to input code. So meaning um, by just using our initializing our hero, so like for this one, okay, you can apply data output of, for example, add data, like for example color code is 50. So meaning you are setting here for the first parameter that is set for the code. So that means you are now setting value of code here as 50. The same thing atong ganiya that we can also use aldos that is equal to code 50. So instead of typing bunch of codes here line by line and setting it manually, we can set by using a constructor instead of just manually adding some value from the attributes. You can pass it directly to the parameter list on this constructor. So meaning this one is the parameter, you assign it from the code, right? So basically, when I comment it, so we try to use system out of print line to check. Okay, and for example, hero code, and we can access it through our object aldos dot code. So since we're using the parameterized constructor, we set it the 50, and we know that that 50 is assigned to the value of code. Okay, that 50 will store in this parameter in the input code. So the input code was assigned to the code here, that is the process. So the same thing that what we did on our previous functions. So here when we output, we can see that our hero code is 50. So we can set automatically set data from our constructor. Okay, so that's the one benefit of having constructor. You can set default data by in on the initialization process stage. Okay, so here we have two functions here, two constructor that have do the same function name but not the same parameter list, but not the same also function. The other one accepts data and assign it from code. The other one accept it from no accepting data, but you just output a constructor. So if you can create another object here, like for example Eudora, so hero hero for Eudora is equal to new hero, and this one is the way of creating still the same. You are on using the default constructor. So instead, if you set here put a data, you're using the other constructor. But since you don't need to put here, automatically the other constructor will execute it. Sorry, hero, that is hero 3, and this is hero 3 also. So when we run it, the other constructor set it to 50 for hero code, but the other constructor set it for only outputting hello. This is a constructor because when you initialize, use not the same constructor. The other constructor has a default function, and the other one has a parameterized function that sets code. Okay, so you can create bunch of constructors if you want. Hero 3, for example, name. Okay, and this one is name is equal to name or input name. So that is why I keep on renaming this one, because there is now conflict. If we use here, the constructor will no longer know what this name is for. His name is for the parameter list, or this name is for this name. So we are using global and local variables. So for us to help the issue, we will just change it to another variable name for this one, so we cannot be messed up with our coding. So we can actually put here input name. That is for the input in the parameter list, and also the input name. That means this one is for input name here, and this one. So as you can see, when we are now having a three constructors in our class but different function. The other function, the default, this one is the default constructor, just only output system out that print line. The other constructor is accepting a integer value, and that is assigned it to code, and the other one, constructor, is accepting string value that is set to name. So that's it. Okay, so when we create another hero, like for example, um, hero 3, for example, uh, Tigreal is equal to new hero. Okay, if we put here, for example, name, for example, Tigreal. Okay, for Tigreal. So this one accesses the integer value, and this one accesses only for the on the code, because this one is accessing for the code, and this one is accessing for the only the default one. Okay, so oh no, this one, it outputs what is on Aldos. Okay, for code. And here we can set here, for example, system out that print line. We can set, for example, a hero code for Tigreal code. So the output for that is this. The hero code is 50 because this is the first object is for Aldos, and we assign it by the use of the other constructor 50. Hello, this is a constructor because we are just using in Eudora object. We only use the default constructor. And here, hero code, I am wrong with this. And Tigreal, we did not set hero code for Tigreal object, but when we are using string, we set it to name. So meaning this one is hero name. Like for example, and we used it for example name. So we manage for the Tigreal, okay, for the Tigreal object, we manage to set value, okay, for the name. So that's it for the constructor. But there is a limitation also for the constructor. Because we cannot now create, like for example for role, because role is still string, you can now create like hero3 string role. Okay, yeah, here you have now a problem. You cannot create another, you cannot overload the same name, yeah, the same name constructor and the same number of parameter and the same type. You can use this one parameter, but you have differ in data type. Here, one parameter, the same string, you cannot use this kind of technique. So all we need to do, you cannot create another setting for rule. So all we need to do is to update. Instead of using this one, you have to upgrade um, another um, um, list. No, add item on your list. So string um, specialty, okay, input role, right? Then string input specialty. Okay, so that's it. So here we can set here, for example, role is equal to input role, and um, special specialty is equal to input specialty. Okay, so by that we can create another constructor. We overload, so we have now three constructors in our class. We overload it by the use of, since all of those here constructors are um, not the same number of item in the parameter list, so that is can be overloaded. Okay, that's it. So that's what we can create another constructor here, for example. So there is no, now we have no error new hero 3, because in our class definition there is now no hero 3 that only have one parameter item on the parameter list. All of those are 3. So it is now affected since we cannot create, I can initiate hero 3 with one item to be passed. So we should pass, like for example here, create comma after this data, and for example tank, okay, then specialty, for example, okay, support, okay. Always remember that is a string, so double quotation. So now we solve the problem and the issue, since we only need only three strings in our parameter. The first parameter is the name, second parameter is the role, and the third is specialty. So that saves, okay, for our hero 3 class definition. Okay, so basically the more you create overload constructors, the more you can choose your the way you initialize objects. Okay, this time we choose three kinds of how why what the way we initialize object. First, we initialize it using one parameter. Second is we initialize it using the default controller, and this is one we initialize it with a three parameter list in our constructor. So because we have a definition that has we overload our constructor, but if you um, decided, like for example, to remove only those two, and you decided to create only one constructor that has with this parameter, when you create your initialization, you don't need na to the default here will no longer available since you don't create a new for this one for um, the default constructor. And also here you cannot create a constructor that has one parameter because on our class definition you only have one constructor, which is this one. So some of the programmers may create multiple we overload constructors so that the way we initialize it, we have a lot of freedom and we can choose to. So right now we are now obliged when we create objects of it, we are now obliged to submit three data um, in our class object initialization. So for initializing object, you need to submit data for assigning it in here. Okay, so we will try to make it complete. So I'll create int here, int code. Okay, input code. So the only separator that we have is I'll just comma. Okay, and then input string laning comma string yeah, that's int year double health double mana and double money, for example. So you have here. So if you are really want not you of everything is organized, like for example input so you can reserve same name, you can have to, right? So since we have already input code, so we are now on input laning. So when you say laning, okay, you can see also on your ID the color of our variables. We see color green, okay, you can see here that this name is intended here, and this color purple here is intended for here. So our problem is if those here, this laning here, and our attribute name here is the same. So what happened when laning is equal to laning? Look at the color of the codes. Okay, meaning since this is a local variable, the one will prevail is on the local. Okay, so meaning you will not access laning attribute here since you can determine it on the color of the variable. So that is why I intend to always put input a while ago for us to don't have this kind of issue since we are having a conflict of the name. So but we can still also solve this kind of problem without even changing it. I just give it another option for you guys. So the first option is to remove, no, to change it and put it unique. You can just put I or whatsoever. But if you will no longer want to use that, we will use um, this operator. So I'll be using this dot. Okay. So if you are using the same name with your attribute, your class attribute and your parameterized variable or attribute, the same name, so you have a problem accessing the address, no, the class attributes. So if the same name, you have a problem because it always detects only the local variable. So to solve that, use the this operator, this dot. So this dot is the operator to really target the class attribute. So really target a class attribute. Java is really a nice job programming language because it's give you a lot of options for you to work with. If you see that the class attributes and the parameterized attributes are not the same value, it automatically sees that this one is for the class attributes and this one is for the class. But here, if we are using now the same attributes for your parameterized constructor and for a class attribute, so what happened? You are now having a problem since it will since you are in the local scope, the laning variable will prevail. For us to really access the laning attributes for the class attributes, we use this. As you can see now, the color for laning here is the same for the laning here, meaning we are now accessing it for the this class attributes. So this is why we are now safe using the same name from the class attributes to our parameterized function. So that's it. So you can use this r here. Okay, is equal to r here. This health is equal to health, and this mana is equal to mana, and this money is equal to money. Okay, so we complete all of that prescribed data that we can set automatically during the instantiation of our class. Okay, so we set that one. So we go to our main. Okay, so in order to initialize data or initialize a new object from our hero, we need to supply those informations that we need to, and we are defining it now. Once you create our um, class, yes, you need to first set this following information. So to first, what is the first one? Like for example, for Aldos, you have to find, for example, what is the code for that? Let me see. Aldos, that is 64. Okay, for a while. So first parameter, always remember what are the parameter list value. Okay, there's the first parameter, second parameter, third parameter, fourth parameter, fifth parameter, sixth parameter, seventh parameter, eighth parameter, ninth parameter. Always do it in order for us to really set the data, because we set it not we set orderly. So if you set it for code, always remember, okay, uh, code is equal to input code. So if you set code, you should put it on the first parameter. If you should set name, you should put it on the second parameter. If you set role, you set it on the third parameter. So in here, in our class instantiation, you should put it in orderly. Okay, so 50, and we have also the name for that is Aldos, and second one is the role, that is a fighter, and comma again for the fourth parameter. We don't know what is the fourth parameter, I forgot. Fourth parameter is specialty, specialties is uh, burst and support, and support, just let comma and add. You can enter it, you can just save. Then last is laning, it is XP laner. Then lastly, oh no, that's not last. We have laning, specialty laning year 2006 2018, 2018, and also health, for example, 300, And we also have health, mana, for example, 200, and money, for example, 1000. So we can set, we have always check it that on our parameter list, we only have four parameter arguments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. So in here also on our, we can set it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's it for the new hero. So the same thing here on hero for Eudora and for Tigreal, you set all those things on the initialization. So for Eudora, I'll search for Eudora. Then okay, I'll just copy all of these to save time. Okay, that is 15. The name is Eudora. Eudora is a mage, and I don't know what is the specialty for this. Okay, read regen mix damage, control and burst. Okay, control and burst. Okay, and is a mid laner. Release date 2016. And for example, the health is 400 or this okay, and 250, 1 2 for example. Okay, that is for our Eudora object. And also there is an error since we need to supply 9 attributes. Okay, Tigreal, this is the last one that I have to put an example. Tigreal or Tigreal, don't know how to pronounce it properly. Hero number 6, and this one Tigreal, and this is tank. Okay, for a while, a tank and support. Okay, tank and support. Okay, then specialty crowd control. Crowd control. Laner rumor. Rumor hero released. Okay, 2016 also. Okay, then example 400 to 50. Okay, and 1 8 for example. So we have now three objects for our class, and this is how we do it, right? So we initialize. Once we initialize, by the help of our constructor, we set all those data using the parameterized constructor. So you can save time, as you can save also line space during your initialization, because you don't need to individually change or assign it. So right here, so when we run it, so we can get also for Aldo's code, you can see the code for Aldo's, and we can also set the name for Tigreal, Eudora. We can also output. We will just set all of those one Eudora, all of those are name. So this all of those are name for the tree. So hero name, for the three um, object in our class hero. So when you run it, we have three names that we output. Hero name Aldos, hero name Eudora, hero name Dick. So that's how we can use constructor. And by the use of constructor, we set values from our attribution. We also learn the use of the this keyword for us to access the access variable, the class attributes or class attribute are variable. So if you have the same name with the local variable, we can specify that this is a class attribute. Okay, so that's for the class constructor. Okay, so I guess there is no another thing for class constructor. So I hope you've learned something with this video. Part 4 is coming, and that is all about how we can wrap this up for the activity for this class and object in Java session. Okay, so again, that's all, and thank you for watching this far. I hope you've learned something with me. Again, be safe always. Bye bye, everyone. God bless.